G'day folks. Well, getting back into it the next day. I appreciate the comments on the last video. The valve shims are probably just worn to that point that I can't tell if they're quite within spec, not with the range of gauges that I've got. Like, they're within tolerance, but they're probably, because some of them are on the far end of tolerance, it's just enough to make it noisy. The other thing is these scissor gears, which I stupidly called spider gears at one point. You should be able to put a service bolt through here and lock them up so you can take the cam out without the thing springing and flying around. But I can't actually line that hole up. It's like it's off a tooth or possibly even off part of a rotation. So I wonder if that is the problem. Now I've got to get her back together again so she can get me to work next week, but with a new gasket on the rocker cover and everything, it's no big deal to pull it all off again. It's not much of a job. It's only a 10-minute job. So I'm going to put everything back together and leave it as is. I know I'm happy that nothing's getting obviously lunched and destroyed. So yeah, what can I say? Yeah, the fact that I can't put a service bolt through any of these holes because they're misaligned or whatever, I'm thinking that might be part of the problem. I'll tackle that another day. Anyway, let's get the cover back on. I've just given it a bit of a clean and a wipe out. So I can fit the new gasket in there and see how it goes together. Just put a dab of gasket sealant in the corners down here and then stick it back on. Don't cover it with gasket cement like the last guy did. I'm guessing he reused an old gasket instead of a new one. Okay, so top cover's back into place. New rubber gasket. I just made sure that I pushed it down firmly into the cover before I flipped it over, otherwise they do drop out. If you do have any major issues with it dropping out, you could put a tiny little drop of super glue here and there, just enough to stop the bulk of it from falling out. Not enough to cause any issues, but just enough to keep it there, and once it compresses down it'll seal anyway. You just want a tiny little dab so that it stays there, but I haven't had any issues with this one, thankfully. The kit will also come with these, which are for sealing around the spark plug tubes, because this is the only thing that keeps the cover on, is the big nuts that go on the top here. And if these leak, you end up with oil going down everywhere. So they go on like so, metal side up. And then when you tighten it down, they compress into that V and seal it up. So that's pretty good. The socket to remove them, I don't know what the metric one is, but I used an Imperial. It was at 1 1/8 inches, and that just spun them straight off. Like, they weren't on tight. The rubber had obviously gotten hot over the years and compressed. Everything had compressed a bit. They weren't all that tight, but at least the cover wasn't leaking. Yeah, I didn't get half moons, but these have metal half moons in there now, and they're already sealed, so they're going to stay there. There's no rubber half moons. There is a blank cap seal in the end here, but again, it's not leaking, so I'm not going to touch it yet. One thing I do want to do is take the top timing cover off and just check the belt tension. Also make sure you clean your PCV. Make sure it checks and clicks. It's basically just a check valve. This one was gummy and slow to operate, so I just blew some carby cleaner and compressed air through it, and it works. And it just shoves back in there. Yeah, PCV connects up to the vacuum side of the manifold. That other little vent there just goes straight to the atmospheric side of the air box. This is all atmospheric. That's the throttle belt body, and that's under vacuum. Unless the throttle's wide open, then you've got just air rushing through it, but at idle, with the throttle shut, this whole thing's under complete vacuum. Well, not complete vacuum, but a high vacuum. Anyway, I better tighten this thing down and yeah, keep on going. The kit, I can't remember what the kit was called. It's made in Belgium. It's a reasonably well made gasket. It's not all ratty like some of the cheap stuff is. Okay, I did lie about the socket size. It's actually 1 3/16 of an inch. I'm sure there's a metricated equivalent, I just don't have one. So I'm just going to sequentially tighten those down. Just go over them sequentially until there's a reasonable amount of tension on it. Once it's warmed up and everything's settled in, I'll go over them again. They're easy enough to get to. You just pull the spark plug boots off and that's it. You can apply a little more tension once they slacken off, because obviously the rubber's going to compress through age and heat. Yeah, so it should work quite well. At least seal up 100% now. PCV will work properly. Get the rest of it back together and get the lifting hooks back on, get the hoses back on. There's a sensor that has to go onto there. What do I have? No, sorry, it's not a sensor, that's just a capacitor. A 0.47 microfarad 250 volt condenser cap for I think it's alternator or ignition. Actually it goes back here, so it's probably a condenser for the ignition coils or something like that. The alternator's over here, and where's its condenser? Somewhere. It might even have one built in. Either way, that's a that'd be an ignition condenser. Okay, well that's looking better now. They're all tensioned down firmly. They get to a point and then they just go firm. So I'm wondering if they're actually bottoming out on their threads. They just get to a certain point and that's it. Either way, there's plenty of travel in it to compress the gaskets and should be just fine. Lifting hooks are back on. They're easy enough. I'd be interested to know if you can pull this engine out from the top. I think people have done it before, but I think technically they say you drop the whole K-frame, the front frame which has the engine, the wheels, the suspension, everything on. So like you take your strut bolts out, the K-frame bolts, all the hoses and things, and just basically do a minivan thing where you lift the body of the minivan off the engine and powertrain assembly and just move it away. I'd be interested to know if you can actually take the engine out on its own, because if I can get a good rebuildable core, I'd consider rebuilding one and just keep it on the shelf until I need it, because poor little Betty here hasn't been cared for the best over the years. There was virtually no oil on the dipstick when I picked her up. I actually shut her off and refused to test drive because there was nothing in there, and I ended up going back with a bottle of oil for a last inspection and possible purchase, and basically just negotiated the price down on the basis that I may have to replace the engine, and it was successful. She's here, she's actually in better condition than I expected, but still not 100%, as you can tell by the top end wear through neglected oil changes, which is more than likely what that is. It might not be the spider or scissor gears, but it's more than likely the shims on the valves are cupped or dished from wear, as well as a bit of wear on the lobe. The gauges I'm using are fairly wide, so it might be spanning that dish and giving me a false reading. That's another thing I considered before. Either way, it's not terminal. I don't hear bottom end noise. I don't hear anything that sounds particularly like wrist pin noise or gudgeon pin noise. So, just see how it goes. She might last another 200,000 Ks or might only last 50,000. Doesn't really matter. Cheap cars are cheap cars. You can't complain about getting something that's not brand new. Just have fun trying to make it run better. That's sort of part of the challenge. I like challenges like this. Anyway, I better get the ignition gear and everything back on. They're all numbered and obviously the right length, so you can't mix them up. And get the throttle cable back on. That just bolts on there, and you loop this around and hook it in to the plastic throttle linkage assembly. It's also got a position for a cruise control cable to attach to it as well. This model doesn't have cruise control with the cable that comes through here. Actually, I don't think Blue even has cruise control. It's the only option it doesn't have. You've got all the options, including the safety and airbag package, and there's an ABS block in here, but there's no cruise control. Not that I use it. I don't like cruise control. The Ford's got it. I've never used it. So, yeah, anyway. Onward. Well, that's about done. I'm just about to do a quick test run. I'm going on to a live stream hangout for a bit, so I want to get this started running, make sure that's all right, then worry about things later. That's about it, really. Try and get the tag back where it's supposed to be. There's a little notch. There we go. That's in. Pretty good. I just realised one of Blue's old tyres on her back end has gone down again. I'm going to have to buy 2 new ones I'm going to get a couple of brand new tyres next week, I think. I'm sick of these crappy old ones bloody failing. This one's chewed to hell. Oh well. They're both pretty average. That one's better. But that other one's probably been run flat for a while, looking at the way the sidewall markings are almost scrubbed off. So yeah, certainly a lot quieter than the ATs. I'm not going to buy them again. Well, I didn't buy them to begin with, but you know what I mean. Yeah, pretty normal. Oil light goes out straight away, so that's a good sign. There's definitely oil and all that sort of thing. Winch is hot, definitely a lot noisier, and low idle. Idle might be a little bit too low at full temperature, running temperature, but you just hear the clatter pretty obvious. Not so bad now that she's cold, but up to temperature, a bit more of an issue. Yeah, idling at $1,000. That's cold idle. The idle air controller and everything works fine now that I've rebuilt it. I think it was stuck with carbon. It was just carboned up and stuck when I got her, and she'd sit at, particularly when hot, she'd idle at like 1800 RPM, which is really unhealthy. Not good at all. Oh, mainboard's dry now. That's good. Anyway. Yeah, I'll finish putting it back together later anyway. Saturday, so I can stay up late. I'll change that flat tyre out and look at getting a pair of brand new ones on Monday or Tuesday. No, sorry, I'll get Blue to the service centre and everything and deal with tyres later in the week, maybe Thursday or Friday. I'll get a couple of new Dunlops, or I think Kumos are fairly inexpensive but still very good. KH51s or KR51 I think it is. They're fairly popular amongst the small SUVs. I want to flush the power steering too, so I might do that later on. That doesn't require any serious effort. I just got to pump the reservoir out, fill it, run it for a bit, pump it out, run it again, that sort of thing. Just keep purging it. Purge about a litre through the system and should run pretty well. Because that fluid in there is cooked. It's not healthy. Anyway, that'll do for now. I'm not going to move her yet. I've got to change that tyre, but either way, everything's pretty healthy. The sound works well too. The amplifier's hidden away under there. You can just see the negative cable, and that's it. You wouldn't know there was an amp or anything in here. I'm tempted to get a couple of Serwin Vega 6-inch speakers to put in the doors. They're only $50 each, which is pretty darn good. Same with Infinity series. The Infinity speakers are really good. They're about $50 or $60 each. Yeah, it's starting to come down in idle actually. You can hear more clatter as it gets slower. It's not obnoxiously loud, but it's noticeable. Blue is much quieter. Much quieter. Mind you, Blue would be lucky to have 100,000 Ks, and very regular servicing, like inside the crankcase and everything is spotless from what I've seen. Much better than poor old Betty, because she's been neglected by her previous owners. Despite having the head redone, again, I think they've worn the replacement parts out already by neglecting the oil changes. Oh well, that'll do for today, and thanks for watching. I've got a couple of different videos to upload today, so should be right for the week.